and welcome to The Year We Started Podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the ashes of last year's podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff.
And I'm your other co-host, Nick.
And I am still your co-host, Jeff. This is our podcast. We are a couple of friends that are half a continent apart that are wanting to spend a little more time getting together and talking about some of the things that are fun and interesting to us. Nick.
Jeff.
I am definitely a crier, and I want to talk about that a little bit and maybe talk about some of the things that have made me cry over the years. I am such a sucker for a good story that is, jerking on the heartstrings. I've been a crier at movies and TV shows my entire life, and I want to talk about that, about some of the things that have made me...
Can I tell you that's really endearing? That's like the most endearing. And it's also very Jeff. That's the most Jeff thing I've ever heard. In a good way. Genuinely.
I mean, that is my thing. Is I live with my heart on my sleeve. So you're certainly going to hear exactly how I feel about things 99.999% of the time, with very little reservation. But Nick, before we go into that, and I talk to you about some of the things that I've felt over the years, I want to know, what's your experience with crying? Like, it's a very non-male thing to do.
No, so that's...
But what's your experience been?
So I try really hard not to let gender norms be a normalized thing that are controlling my life, or traditional senses of masculinity to be an important, guiding principle or factor in my life, or anything that I care about. But crying is one that's hard for me to shake. It's as when I feel myself getting to a point of wanting to or needing to cry, I kind of shut down or try to disconnect or whatever. Like, I just kind of break it off, right? Whatever it is, conversation.
What is most... So, like, I don't want to talk about personal life stuff because that is more depressing than the rest. But is there a particular thing in media that gets you...
Dogs, animals and dogs. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but the scene in I Am Legend actually just, like, I can't watch that movie. I can't.
Yeah.
I obviously I haven't watched it in forever. It came out when we were pretty, like, young or adolescents or whatever, but, like...
Is that the scene where he has to put his dog down, basically?
He does.
Oh, man.
His dog's got got whatever the zombie disease is, and he realizes it, and he's been alone with the dog for so long, and just, like, it breaks me. I can't handle it. I can't do it. I can't... I don't want to be negative in this show, but, like, you could tug on my heartstrings with any... I mean, animals they're not like us. They're not...
But they're so innocent, and that's what's so hard.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, man.
I didn't mean to get sad.
No, we are literally talking about crying, Nick.
Wait, is crying sometimes considered a sad topic? Is that not usually a happy topic?
Did you watch
full of joy and
love?
Did
you watch Homeward Bound back in the day?
Yeah, Jeff, I've watched a really disproportionate amount of Homeward Bound in my life. I'm not kidding. My older sister was the kind of kid that, like, bugged the crap out of their parents to do things like just like controlled things by bugging them. And one of her things was that she literally fell asleep for 3 years in a row every night with Homeward Bound or Homeward Bound 2 on. 3 years in a row. She can repeat every word of that movie even today. It's not like we watch the movie anymore, but she'll quote it sometimes as a joke to mess with my dad because he's just, like, traumatized.
I don't.
So yes, I've watched Homeward Bound.
I don't even remember exactly the details. I just remember how much I cried every time it happened. Like, is it Peter that is the dog that comes back in the first one, or the cat?
I believe so. I didn't watch it this much. My sister was much older than me, so like I was like 4 during this.
So I'm just gonna go down the list of things that have randomly made me cry.
But I do believe it is Peter. Like I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah.
Oh no, Peter's the owner of the dogs.
Oh no, the line is like Peter. Like I worried about you so or whatever. Oh my gosh. That makes me cry again. Gosh dang it.
Yeah.
No,
it's so
when they
precious.
first make it home. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Because the dogs are worried about their freaking...
we can't talk about this.
The movie's perfect.
Because literally the entire show is being worried about them. Man, that's so Gosh dang it. The other things that I remember, like I was just taking notes of random things I could think of over the years. Did you ever Land Before Time?
Yep.
Watch Land Before Time?
I don't really remember Before Time. I did watch it as a kid a couple of times for sure.
And like I've gotten emotional on the show one other time, and it was talking about teachers and stuff. In Land Before Time, one of them, I think it was one of the first or second one, but there's a time where Littlefoot thinks that his shadow, like I think he's the brontosaur or whatever, like the long neck guy.
Yeah.
He thinks that his shadow is his mom. And like that, like I literally cried like every time that happened.
Oh man.
We'll quickly move on past that. Did you read? Did I already ask you? Like now I'm like emotional. I'm forgetting the things I just asked you.
I know, it's okay. It's okay.
Did you read Where the Red Fern Grows?
I don't believe I have. No, I don't think so.
Okay, don't. No, it's do you know the book though? Like, have you heard that? I assume so. Like,
yes. They made it into a movie too, right? It's a movie and a book.
I think so. Here's my story with Where the Red Fern Grows, and my mother listens to this podcast, so she'll know for sure that this is a true story. But I read that in like 4th or 5th grade or something, and like I've always been a big dog lover, and it's one, again, as a person who likes dogs, that's not a good one to read. But I remember reading the end of that story and going to my parents' room and crying, and then laying in bed with them as like a 5th or 6th grader. And like, just, that is not a thing. I don't know. Like, yeah, that as a dog person, that is not going to be a one that you want to look up and read. There's lots of other things we could read together, Nick. Let's pick not that one.
Okay. Well, we won't do that one. I told you that I read a book over my wife's shoulder just like literally like 10 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago or something. But the book we read, where I read over her shoulder, was the book "The Art of Racing in the Rain." Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
It's by I believe it's by Bruce Cameron. I think that's right. Excuse my typing, listeners. I apologize. Oh no, it's not by him. It's by Garth Stein. Art of Racing in the Rain is about a guy and his dog and a bunch of metaphors, but it takes place from the perspective of the dog. And let me tell you, what that one broke me. I was like, geez. I'm not even in love with this book necessarily, like, but I just was like, my wife had to like take breaks from reading it so that I could compose myself like a child. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. I know you're in the book. I'm just.
So I'm going to get into the most two recent ones. But one before, like, it's still a little bit back in the history of things. Did you ever watch Up?
Yeah.
Beginning of that movie.
Oh, Jeff, why are we talking about really sad things?
I'm trying to be, like, honest. Like, these are things I legitimately, like, I either cried or bawled at. So here you go.
No, it's fair.
We'll move on. So these are things that I have since my kids have been alive. So I like just the only reason why I say that, it's not that it's necessarily because I have kids, but I can place it in the timeline, which means this has been in the last 4 years. Did you watch Tom Hanks play Mr. Rogers in Won't You Be My Neighbor?
No, I was assuming that it would break me, that it would not work out well for my meanness, for my happiness.
I watched Mr. Rogers as a kid. We grew up in Kansas. I didn't have cable. I didn't have satellite TV until I was like 13 or 14 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like we grew up on PBS and stuff like that. That was a super entertaining big part of like when we could spend time watching TV. That was a thing I spent a lot of time on. But then to find out how cool and wholesome and good of a person Mr. Rogers was, turns out he was a super big advocate for, the people that benefited from his TV series like myself. And then to watch somebody as wholesome as Tom Hanks, which it's hard to hate anything Tom Hanks has ever done.
Completely agree.
That was extremely emotional of a thing. I wanted to go into that thinking like, oh man, this is going to be a fun Tom Hanks show, and I've loved Tom Hanks my entire life. Like, this will be good. I love Mr. Rogers. I know the story. It'll be really cool. Turns out I just cried like the entire back half of the movie.
Oh man.
Because
I can imagine.
It's like, man, like I benefited so much from this guy. Turns out behind the scenes my entire life, he was just advocating for the sort of thing that he was doing. It's a super cool thing. The last thing that I'll mention, which is this one is kid related. So, Nick, did you watch like the original Pokemon movie when it came out, or?
Yeah, of course. Jeff, do you cry at the original Pokemon?
I cried at the original Pokemon back in the day.
Oh man!
And, I've since watched
Pikachu just throwing punches.
Don't talk about it. I need to talk about this, Nick.
Sad.
And don't talk. No,
it's sad.
But no, the crazy thing about that is Avron has really enjoyed Pokemon stuff, and it's not his favorite thing in the world, but he definitely gets on these kicks about it. But like watching the Pokemon movie with him, like he gets so concerned when they're doing the fighting against each other thing, and like that whole thing when Ash dies with quotes around it. I mean, he's fine, obviously, but oh my freaking gosh! Like how does some dumb show from 25 years ago or whatever it was, like still man, it is such an interesting combination of something that is entertaining to a 4-year-old and heart-wrenching for a 30 whatever year old. Like it is, I don't know, it's very crazy how that happens. Like
absolutely,
props to them for finding the heartstrings of people for the last 3 decades. But like, man,
for walking the line, and for instilling an image that I haven't watched that since probably. I mean, I don't know. I may have had a VHS of it or something, I guess. But I mean, I didn't ever, even as an adolescent, I didn't like go back and watch that. But I still remember you said that. And I was like, oh yeah, Pikachu throwing punches, absolutely exhausted, and I knew exactly what you're talking about.
As a person very susceptible to crying, that is chief among them. Anyways, so that is. I've now come clean on the record on the podcast. I am willing to cry at anything given the merit that's worth crying about.
So let me give you 2 that are not as good and that they aren't as innocent as those. All of those are really good examples of just like super innocent things, and that's why part of the reason that they can be so emotional, because like the like not just the loss of innocence.
Before you get into this part, can I tell you I also cried at every single Rocky movie, I think.
Really? That's that is very Jeff. That's very on brand. Sports things can have like a very gripping thing especially for you and me who like have a background in sports. I think when it can feel really personal when you feel like you can owe a lot to sports and sports have meant a lot to you. I know that for some people who don't love sports, that it feels like it's just silly jocks with their sports ball. But like, I mean, dude, sports was like the reason I was able to be socially involved at all as a kid. I moved around a lot, and like, so sports gave me friendships. You know what I mean? I'm with you. Even Rocky isn't, a traditional sports movie in that it's not a bunch of kids playing baseball or whatever, but like it's still completely a sports movie in the end. I don't know.
Nick, have you ever seen any or all of the Rocky movies? I need to know.
I watched the original Rocky when I was a kid, but I haven't watched it in a long time.
All right, I'm the worst. First,
right?
We need to watch the Chiefs Super Bowl, and then next we need to watch the entire Rocky series together.
I guess we're doing it. Okay, and you're just gonna cry every time, and I'm gonna be.
I'm good now. Like I've cried enough times I can now just like objectively watch them. But man, as a young kid, anyways, go ahead.
Okay, let me give you two that like absolutely break me, and I have to stop watching. One I haven't seen in a long time, in part because when I was young, it gave me a really emotional reaction, and I just decided I wasn't going to watch it again because I was like, nope, I'm not going to make myself want to cry. But have you seen Little Miss Sunshine?
Have I? I don't think so.
So it's a 2006 American tragic comedy, and there's two things of that movie that just like absolutely break me. It has Steve Carell and maybe like his most serious role like ever.
Yeah, no, I definitely worked at Blockbuster when this came out, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Oh yeah, well there is a angsty little teenager who has a moment of just like his life feeling like his life gets thrown out, and as a angsty little teenager who maybe wasn't that angsty or that motivated, this guy was way more motivated than a better guy, had it more together. But anyways, point being that when his life gets thrown upside down in a moment, it just like hurts me. And then the other one is have you watched the Ozarks? Have we talked about this?
I think we've talked about it like off the pod, but no, I haven't watched the Ozarks.
There's a one episode of the Ozarks, the second to last episode of the most recent season, that is not okay. It's not okay. It hurts, dude. It is like the most. It's like building the entire episode, and it's like these hour-long, drama episodes. But the entire episode, there's just this heavy gloom over the episode, and you like. I don't know if you really consciously know what's happening right away or if it takes a little while or what, but man, dude, I'm not going to watch it again because it's maybe the best episode of television I've ever seen, but it's way too emotional.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to go away from the innocent examples or anything too strongly, but like that, like recently, Jen and I watched that around the start of the pandemic, and it hurt me.
That's a
hurt me, Jeffrey.
That's a Netflix one, right?
Yes, it is. It is.
That we might have to add that one to the backlog.
The old list.
Yep, to the list. Oh man.
Okay, Jeff. Let's go talk about something that's not going to make me want to be sad anymore. Remember when this is about fun and interesting?
Yeah, topics that are fun and interesting to us. I am your co-host Jeff.
I'm your sad Nick.
I'm your sad Nick. Speaking of things that don't make me sad, I remember back in the pre-pandemic days of vacations and travel, one of my favorite times was out west, out on the beaches of California. We got to enjoy a lot of things. Heck, we even got to hang out with Nick and his wife Jen, my wife and I, and we had an all-around good time. What we didn't know, though, is that we were going to be starting a podcast. And what we didn't know at the time that we started the podcast is that we were going to be sponsored by a company from that very same area. We would like to thank this week our sponsor, Santa Cruz Mountain Essentials. You can check out the clothing line at semessentials.com. As we've mentioned the past couple weeks, in addition to some awesome clothing, you can also support a nonprofit of your choice, as well as plant a tree. And again, if that was not enough, you can also support both SEM Essentials and our very own podcast by using TYWSAP at checkout to save 10%. That's TYWSAP at checkout. Seriously, they're great people, and just real talk here, we very much appreciate them. I've worn my zip hoodie like 1,000 times at this point. Also, in addition to buying something at semessentials.com, you can also check them out on Instagram. They have a number of things that they share on there. You can give them a follow and help support their business. Thank you so much, Santa Cruz Mountain Essentials, for your support of our show. Nick, one thing I want to talk about before we get into our final topic of the night is I want to talk about pickled eggs. And or other things that are unexpectedly good. Like, I've been a fan of pickles in general, separate from sandwiches. Like, I'm a very adamant person when it comes to I don't want to have if I want to get a hamburger somewhere, I don't want to have pickles on that hamburger. Like, I feel like it completely overwhelms the taste. But I do like pickles by themselves. Like, I feel like they have some merit. All right, so
yeah, I am not a pickle guy. I do not
a pickle
like pickles
at all.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so this might be a very short segment. While I'm talking about this thing, I want to talk about anything that you think might be something that is unexpectedly good. I think I have maybe one other thing, but I very well may forget it as I'm talking. So I recently was introduced to the fact that pickled eggs existed. I didn't even know that that was a thing. But apparently, when you are done eating pickles, you can hard-boil eggs, put them in a pickle jar with where the pickles used to be with their pickle juice, and then you pickle the hard-boiled eggs, and they're now pickled eggs. Did you know that this was a thing? I didn't really know it was a thing.
I did, yeah.
Have you had a pickled egg before?
I have not. Because I don't like pickles, so I'm not like a crazy egg guy. I like eggs. That's not fair. I like eggs, but like, Jeff, can I just ask real quick? I'm not trying to call you out here. I'm not trying to put a damper on your love of pickled eggs. I really am not trying to be a negative Nancy here. Is this the worst thing you can do to your breath? Or pickled eggs the worst thing you can make your breath smell?
Dang.
Because it sounds to me
you sent me deep here. That is a valid question.
I'm not trying to be a negative guy. I really am not. I'm just saying, like, the combination does not sound like it's good for
I really like
I feel
tuna.
like I need to brush my teeth the moment after.
I really like tuna. I feel like that might be a competitor, but you're not freaking far off as far as what it does to you. Oh man. So one of the things that this is, I feel like, more generally acceptable. This was something that I first had like when I was like 12 years old or something. I don't remember what it was. Nick.
Okay.
So you've heard of peanut butter, I feel like?
Once or twice,
and
yeah.
Jelly, like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Nick, if you toast a peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
ooh,
the peanut butter gets hot, the jelly gets hot. It is literally like, I mean, I certainly have the things that are my favorite things, and like they don't need to be gimmicks to be delicious. But as far as gimmicky deliciousness goes, like, my freaking goodness, have I never gotten over the fact of how good a toasted peanut butter and jelly sandwich is.
Wait, that sounds awesome.
It is awesome, Nick. Like,
I like that's the kind of weird that I can totally get into with food. That's the like kind of like, oh, why would you mess with mess with my favorites? How do you make the favorites better? I want some freaking toasted peanut butter jelly right now.
Dude, complete credit to random kid and person that I was close to back in 2000 and probably 2002 or whatever. But man, that, of all the random things that have stuck with me, that has stuck with me the hardest. I've done that for my kids. They approve. They like it too. There's very few things that I think are kind of fringe, weird things that also my kids can adopt as things that they love. So I feel like, Nick, if I can like it and my kids can like it, who are very picky, I feel like that is a good cross section right there.
I'm not
need
kidding.
to give it a try.
Oh wait, I don't know if I have my the jelly that I really like.
We don't have to do the thing where we did the cereal and water.
No. I'm just saying, like, I'm not kidding when I say that, like, I'm gonna go out of my way to do this like as soon as possible. I will try to be doing this like tomorrow, if I can get the jelly that I don't think we have.
Funny,
so,
like har funny podcast, whatever. Like, friend to friend, you need to give it a go. It is delicious.
Jeff, I just want you know, har funny podcast, whatever. That's I know you didn't say it that way, but that's how I feel. It's like that's a really rough description of our conversations here, Jeff. I really take these seriously. I don't know about you, but
okay. So, Nick, do you have a thing from your childhood or a young adulthood, or I guess that's as far as it goes? You as young adulthood, Nick.
My God,
I'm sorry.
No, honestly, no. I'm not like the most adventurous eater. I like got the mantra of being picky when I was really young, and I feel like it was very undeserved. Do you know that like we all have a chance at having certain genes that there's basically no point in us having, that they're not really like evolutionarily beneficial or whatever? Well, I have one that makes ketchup taste very different to me than for most people. So I still like ketchup, but it's just not as good. And I I think it affects other flavors as well. The reason I bring up ketchup is just the one it's known for or whatever, but I think it affects other flavors as well. My point being, I was a very, very unadventurous eater as a kid, so I don't have those like fun, awesome ones. Have I told you about pizza with Thai sauce though? I think I have.
You have,
right?
like, and we looked it up, and
it's not there from that pizza place anymore.
Next time in California, you're gonna have to figure this out for me. But otherwise,
I'm going to.
I am out of luck.
I will say I've had a lot of like weird, not weird, but wow, weird meats is a weird way to say that. I've had like unconventional meats. I've had like
kangaroo and
shark steaks. No, I've had like shark steaks. I've had alligator. I've had
alligator before.
Ostrich burgers.
Yeah.
Alligator's not that weird, right? Like if you go to the right place. Like I think I had it in Atlanta on like a layover or something.
I had it in Louisiana, so I feel like that's the right place.
Yeah, that's probably the right place for it. Maybe mine was in Louisiana too. I've had I think I've had an elk burger. All of them were really good. It's either an elk burger or something else from this one place. I could look it up right now to confirm it, but all of them were really good. I really liked shark. I was like into shark. I was having shark, and first off, when you eat shark and you think about it, you're kind of like, I'm at the top of the food chain. I won.
Yeah,
good job, me.
I figured it out. This is the final frontier.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, that or I'm like a, like moderately in shape dude who happens to live in like a society of 7 billion people that but whatever. I won.
Yeah.
Good job,
me personally, I did this.
Exactly. Thank you. But no, shark, really good. Would recommend. Elk, really good. Would recommend. I say that I'm the wrong guy to advocate for those things, but whatever.
Man, I literally am dying to talk more about this sort of topic, and I have random thoughts about all of these things. But Nick, we need to move on. I need to know what on earth do you know about Christopher Knight / who on earth is Christopher Knight?
Okay, so I am not like an expert on this topic. I stumbled across this topic this week, and I fell in love with this article. But there is a book on this guy, and there is a documentary on this guy, and I haven't watched or read those. I've just read a couple of articles. In 2013, a man was caught who was a perennial thief and burglar in a town in Maine. What's the town called? Because it's not in my head right now. Crap, it's not in my notes. How do I not have it in my notes? In Belgrade Lakes in Maine, okay? He had become kind of like a little local legend, which, I've never had any local legends. I hate when people say that they're like, that's the spot. That's like the town spot. Like, I had none of that when I was growing up. I missed out on all the fun towns. So 2013, they catch this guy named Christopher Knight, who is a burglar who had become a little bit of a local legend there, nicknamed by the locals the North Pond Hermit, because they're in the North Pond area, because he'd been burglarizing homes there for decades. Eventually, it came out that it had been 27 years.
Oh my!
That he had been burglarizing homes, and Jeff, he didn't have a home. He didn't talk to anyone. He didn't have anything. He was a man who just went out into the wild in the forests of northern Maine and just like hid out away from society. And just, but he's not a hermit in the because you and I would think of that and probably think of some like survivalist.
I was literally going to say, like, is he some kind of hermit living outside the outskirts of the city or something? Because, like, that is unfathomable that you would be somebody who would, burglarize a place, but then also be a person who doesn't really live on any means. I don't know. That's wild.
So, have you read or watched Into the Wild?
I know of it.
So it's about another person who went out into the wild.
Isn't he the guy that
Alaska.
dies from the bear?
He does.
Yeah,
he does indeed die from the bear in the books. I don't think or in the movie. I don't think it's known why he died in real life. But
gotcha.
But the point being that he's a guy who wanted to get away from society, and I want to live off the land and be out with nature and be one with nature, and chose the most rugged, untamed spot of land. No. That's not. That's like that's the traditional idyllic story. And the reason that Christopher Knight is super interesting to me is that I don't think that's him at all. I don't think he even really truly knows why he went out or why he did what he did. But he survived by stealing food from people, stealing food, clothes, books, and gas tanks or propane tanks, because he had a 2-burn stove that he connected propane tanks to for 27 years in the woods.
That is
Jeff.
That's barely shorter than my entire life.
Right.
And for you, barely shorter than your entire life, young man. And that is wild. That is wild.
And he made it a point to never get caught and to be prepared to leave if he ever were caught. And lived a life of not living off the land. He stole clothes and had a not a tank, something he washed his clothes in, and stole deodorant and shampoo and stole razors and shaving cream, so that he could keep himself relatively trimmed, so that he wouldn't look too crazy if someone ever found him. He kept a getaway bag with extra quick set of supplies in case someone ever found his camping spot, because after the first 2 years of wandering, he found a spot that he loved out in the woods, and just decided this is where I'm going to live forever. And he said that he hadn't spoken a word to a human since the 90s, when a hiker passed by him while he was out out in the woods, not at his specific spot. And he said hi, and the hiker didn't say anything and kept hiking, and that was it. So he gets caught in 2013, which I should say. So he starts stealing propane tanks, breaking into homes to steal stuff, stealing all kinds of foods, like cereal and candy and all kinds of snacks. Did not eat well by his own admission. Frozen foods that he could keep frozen, and then whatever. And then he tried very, very hard to make things as inconspicuous as possible. Inconspicuous is the word I'm looking for. Tried to make it look like he was not stealing things. He said he would borrow things when he could. He was deeply. The main article that I read for this was a profile in GQ, which is kind of surprising because I wouldn't expect GQ to do this kind of story, but whatever. Where the author of the article, when Christopher Knight was arrested, reached out to him through letter, because he was a total recluse, and then came and visited him many times in prison, because he was in prison and there was no legal precedent for his whole thing. So he was just in prison for a long time. He had committed over 1,000 burglaries, because, it's not that hard to do over 27 years, but dude,
I guess, yeah.
1,000 burglaries. But the reason that I thought he was really interesting is just that I didn't get the traditional idyllic story of a man who really just wanted to get away wanted to get away from society. He wasn't traumatized. He said that he had a good relationship with his parents. He loved his parents, and he was kind of ashamed of his mom having to come see him when he was in jail. He had siblings, and he said one of his big regrets was that his brother helped him co-sign for a car, and then he basically used that car to drive out into the woods. So his brother was on the hook for this car payment, and he felt really bad about it. He laughed at everyone, he was very, very reclusive and very quiet when he finally was caught and he's in jail. He kind of laughed and made fun of, in the article, people calling him a hermit. He's like, I never really considered myself a hermit. They all look to me for fortune cookie style wisdom, and I don't know what to tell them. And it makes perfect sense. I don't know. It doesn't make perfect sense. It's just a very confusing human being. But he gave a really, really good quote. The author presses him on their last visit together. the guy, even though this guy visits him and writes him, is probably the only person he's really had regular contact with, even after getting out, or getting caught. He tells the author that, you're not my friend. I don't want to see you again once I'm out of here. So on the author's last visit to see him, he quotes that he was trying to get Chris to tell him why he did it. Like, why did you go? What was your takeaway? Why did you do it? Why did you stay there for so long? And the best quote I saw in this whole thing was Chris became surprisingly introspective. Quote, I did examine myself, he said. Solitude did increase my perception. But here's the tricky thing. When I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. With no audience, no one to perform for, I was just there. There's no need to define myself. I became irrelevant. The moon was the minute hand, the seasons the hour hand. I didn't even have a name. I never felt lonely. To put it romantically, I was completely free. And
that's interesting.
Yeah. It's a bizarre perspective, right?
It is. So
he go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
He left when he was 20. Could you imagine just walking out into the woods at 20 and just never coming back?
I can assure you that no, I cannot imagine that.
Yeah.
There is something a little bit romantic about the entire thing. Obviously, the circumstances perhaps not exactly the sort of thing that you would maybe want to hang your hat on, but
totally.
I do feel like there are parts of that story that definitely resonate with my upbringing and the things that I think are interesting and going out into the wilderness and doing that sort of thing. There's a lot to that. Is that something that has drawn you? Like, or is that a draw to you? Like, obviously, you're probably not planning on abandoning your wife to go find isolation.
Not if you're gonna tell her about it like that,
right? Like this is the way to find out. But no, like does that appeal to you at all in a weird kind of primitive sort of way? Or
yeah, no, absolutely. It kind of the idea of removing yourself from the complications and the superfluousness of modern society, all the nonsense that we indulge ourselves with and that society indulges itself at large with, and the petty nonsense that accompanies it all. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I think is really not like, I mean, that there's a lot of fat on the edges of society, right? And there's a lot that we just put up with, that we know is annoying, frustrating, difficult. Politicians squabbling and the keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with extended, whatever it may be. Yeah. There's a lot. And yeah, man, there's definitely a very, like, a primitive and romantic is the right word. Like, I love being in nature. I love, like, I am not at all a survivalist. I wasn't like a Boy Scout or anything like that. I don't know. I would not have the skills at all to last a week, much less 27 years. But, like, there's definitely like a primitive like draw of like, man, I would be amazing to just be here and in a more simple role.
There are a lot of things that we've talked about that I definitely want to expand upon. We just don't have the time tonight. But I do want to say, like, I super appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate our listeners being willing to take the time. If you would like, if you enjoyed the show, you can definitely check us out at patreon.com /TYWSAP, TYWSAP. But like I will say, probably every single episode is, I more than that appreciate so much the thought that anybody would want to share this with somebody that they think would be interested in our show. So if you have somebody that you think would be interested in, just let them know. And if you let them know, feel free to email us or tweet at us or Instagram at us. It breaks down pretty quick here at this point. I don't really know what the right verbs are.
All the other ones are that you can find our channel. I know that you're trying to find the word for YouTubing and TikToking and whatever it is, but you can find us at TYWSAP on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, but not Snapchat. Jeff is very adamant about this. Not Snapchat. Absolutely not.
No. But I especially want to thank our patrons for supporting the show. We have a Patreon-only podcast. We've talked about a few topics over the past couple weeks that I feel like are interesting and definitely off the general flavor of what we would typically talk about, but still fun to listen to. thank you so much for our patrons for supporting our show. If you want to check that out, again, patreon.com/TitusUp. Nick, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to, take a little time to do some podding with me today.
You are welcome. This has been the year we started the podcast. Thank you for listening.